Hey friends, so I wanted to share briefly, just briefly, the emotions that you feel when you go through a loss of this magnitude. And it's just a grief cycle. And again, on my channel, I have shared the cycle of grief. And when you're going through grief, I feel like you specifically acknowledge it for what it is. Like you know that you're grieving. And everybody grieves differently, and every situation is very individualistic. So I preface that with this, and I just want to say my emotions over the past week have significantly changed. And I have hope and faith in that I'm going to be okay. And I think sometimes when you go through a hard time, you have to remember that things are not always going to be you're not always going to be in the depth of the shock and the depth of the grief. Even though it feels like you'll be in that forever, life does go on. Your body naturally learns to process grief and move forward. It's how God created us, and I'm really thankful for that. I see myself in that even this week, in the week that I've lost my child. I can acknowledge that I'm not where I was a week ago. When I first found out that the news, obviously it was just immense sadness and shock because I didn't know anything was wrong. I still had so many pregnancy symptoms. I had a missed miscarriage, and so you just don't expect that. I never would have believed anything was wrong. I did have a little bit of spotting, but nothing told me that my baby had passed away. I had no idea. And honestly, until I took the misoprostol, my body was not passing that, and that can happen sometimes. So it was just immense shock. I remember we left the doctor's office. I just literally couldn't even speak. My husband drove us, which I always recommend going with somebody to your appointments because you just never know. I feel like a new fear has been unlocked in me to where I realize you can go to your ultrasound thinking everything's fine, and everything is not fine. And for some reason, I guess because I've never been through it, I just didn't even think it was a thing. You don't realize it until you go through something. I didn't know what a chemical pregnancy was until I had one. I didn't know what a miscarriage was until I had one, and so you just learn a lot through this process, and a lot of it is really hard. Those few days were really, really hard. I basically had to have somebody take care of me, cook for me. I was able to work on my computer, which was really helpful to distract me, but I basically I didn't do any housework. I didn't do anything. And luckily I had my husband and my parents that really stepped up and fed us and took care of things and kept us going. And having them around me really helped me in those moments, and just having them there to sit with me, watch a show with me. And honestly, with the whole watching Netflix, that can be very comforting. But for the first few days, I was not comforted by any television. I couldn't focus on a show. I was in too much grief. And as time goes on, you do begin to kind of spread your wings again and open back up. So I had 2 weeks to process kind of the emotional side. I had a week to process, and we went back and confirmed the news. When the news was confirmed, it was hard. I felt a lot of emotions going back into the doctor's office, doing the ultrasound again, just a lot of negative, painful flashbacks from the week before. Anything associated with that building, which I've heard this is pretty common amongst women that have gone through this, but anytime you go back to that building to where you got that bad news, you're just kind of brought back into it. And so I did feel that. I just kind of tried to disassociate with the situation. It wasn't as hard as the first shocking news that the baby had stopped growing. We finally got confirmation. That day was hard too. I went home and cried a lot, and it was like, okay, now what's next? And I just remember feeling really defeated. I can't even begin to express the level of pain that this experience brought to me. It was another level of pain that I didn't know I could experience. And it sucks. Honestly, there's just no other way to put it. And so then I went and, I had to let my body try and pass the loss. We thought it might, it did not. And so that brought another level of anxiety and just worry and uneasy feelings that my body's not passing this pregnancy. And so I remember feeling kind of gross or weird, feeling like if people knew that there was a dead baby inside of me, that there's something wrong with me. I didn't want to be out in public. I just felt disgusting and weird. And I also felt somewhat of peace that the baby was still with me. I knew it was dead, but it was still my baby. That part was really, really psychologically hard. And then about a week later, after we heard the news, I still had not passed the pregnancy. So I told myself, we talked as a family, my husband and I, and we were like, if you haven't passed it by Thursday, like, it's time to take the medicine. So that's what I did. So hard to even accept and process. I remember feeling like, why is this happening to me? I can't believe I have to take the abortion pill. I hate to say it, but as a Christian and somebody who wanted my baby desperately, and I know that my situation was different, and everybody's situation is unique to their experience, so don't misinterpret my message. I'm just saying that me taking that, even though I knew the baby was deceased, in my heart, it was hard to even like get up the courage to start that process and get up the courage to, insert the medicine. It just took a lot. I remember it took a lot of courage. I lay there on the bed and had to be like, okay, you've got to do this. And I remember feeling like, if you want to be healthy, you've got to pass this. You need to move on. And I felt stuck in that phase of not being able to move on because the baby was still there and wouldn't pass. And remember, I was in therapy through all of this, so she significantly helped me process a lot of this, talk through it, figure things out in my heart and my mind. And I definitely recommend, if you're dealing with something this traumatic, like, talk to somebody throughout the process, because if I've learned anything from this miscarriage, it's not a quick thing. When you have a natural miscarriage, when I had my chemical, for example, I found out I was pregnant and immediately basically started bleeding, and then the bleeding was over and it was all over. And not to minimize that, because that's so traumatic as well, but when you when you have a natural miscarriage, everything kind of just does its own thing. When you have a miscarriage, it's a drawn out thing. So you can imagine what my life was like. It was really, really hard. Once I finally took the medicine, the physical pain was like out of this world. And so what my therapist and I talked about was that I had to take this in phases. So my first loss was my first understanding that the pregnancy had failed was shock. And then the next week it was like confirmation of that. So then it was like, intense sadness. And then the next week it was like the physical part. So I had to take it in phases. And the physical part really broke me, really just broke me, because I was already defeated and sad. But the physical part literally just totally just shattered my heart and my being. I'm a week out and look at me. I'm doing really well. I'm out driving around. I'm feeling okay. And so I know that things only go up from here, but the physical part was like, I felt so defeated, and the pain was so incredibly intense. I don't wish it upon anybody. I'll never forget that. I am really glad it's over. As I move past it, for me, one of the most helpful pieces of the puzzle is just remembering that right now where I am, nothing can get worse. Nothing more is coming. There's not another phase of pain or trauma coming. That was the last phase. And just having that behind me for the first time in several weeks, I feel like I can breathe and know that it's behind me. And now it's like, not to get too graphic, but the physical part like really shattered me. Like, nobody ever should have to go through that. And I think next time I might consider, if I do have another unfortunate loss, I don't know if I would do the medicine again like that. I'm just going to be really transparent. And so after that was passed, I think a lot of my emotions are just, the hormones crashing. That was really hard. The first few days after the misoprostol, I was like a puddle of tears and, oh gosh, on the couch, and just, I don't even know who that person is. And I feel like everybody just looked at me like, I don't know how to help you. And I can't, they can't do anything to help you. And that only lasted a few days. And then I do feel like I've hit a turning point of, I got to keep living. And I think your body's great about learning to process and learning to keep going and move on. And I have good moments where I can laugh and enjoy myself and watch TV now and cook and clean and decorate, whatever I want to do, put makeup on, work. I've been working, but I still have moments of like, I can't believe this is my life. Like, I can't believe this happened to me. And I think one of the hardest feelings for me right now is I should still be pregnant every day, and that's gone. And the pregnancy symptoms are gone. And for the first few days after the medicine, after passing the baby, I just felt immense. I remember waking up in the middle of the night one night, and I just felt immense loneliness. And I was like, the baby's gone. It just didn't feel right. I was like, the baby should still be with me, and I think that's one of the hardest feelings looking back and moving forward is I should still be pregnant, and I'm not. And I don't really know how to fix that hole in my heart. And my body, I told my husband, my body still feels like it should be pregnant. My body still feels like there should still be a baby there. It's hard to just turn that switch off. Like, it turned on really quick when I got pregnant, and I don't know how to turn it. I don't really know how to turn it off. And just not having any symptoms anymore, that is heartbreaking. But that's just. So if you find yourself where I am, or if you're starting the process of passing, wherever you are, I'm sorry. I understand. A lot of women do. Just know that there were moments when I felt like I didn't want to keep living, but it was like moments of like, I don't want to be, this is not the life I wanted. That's really dark, but it's true. And I just want to say, a week out, like, you're going to be okay. I know that I'm going to be okay because I see the light at the end of the tunnel, and I know that this grief will not last forever. And I have moments of happiness and laughter, and then I have moments of a lot of sadness. And it comes and goes. I don't know what causes the waves. I don't know what brings on a moment of sadness, but it just happens. And in those moments, I try to pray. I try to ask God for hope, to give me hope that I can someday be a mom. I try to, listen to some music, like uplifting music or Christian spiritual music, or I try to go for a walk. I try to just sometimes even just sit in the moment and just let myself rest. What I've learned from this experience is you're healing mentally, emotionally, and physically. And I learned this week when trying to get my blood work that my body wasn't ready yet. And I was really dehydrated, and I need to take more care of myself. And my body went through a substantial trauma last week, and it's going to take some time to heal from that. So those are just a few of the emotional spectrum that I went through, from the shock to the, denial, anger, bargaining, grief, sadness, all the steps of the grief cycle. I am in the beginning of it, and it's just gonna have to come one step at a time. For me right now, it's really hard to imagine me feeling better anytime soon. Just with the fact that I should be pregnant this year and experiencing all those milestones. I should have been out of my first trimester next week. And so that's heartbreaking. I would have been sharing the news with probably friends and family. And instead, I'm recovering from a substantial trauma, and trying to rebuild the pieces. I turn 30 next week, but I'm not excited for my birthday. I will celebrate because I still deserve to be celebrated, but I don't want to. I was excited to be a mom in 30, and so I don't feel like I see happiness in the foreseeable future for me, and that's kind of hard when you're looking at the future. But we never know what God's plans are, and we never know what He's got around the corner. And I'm praying for Him to give me hope, and hopefully these doctors will be able to figure out something that might be showing up and might be able to be treated, and we'll figure out how we can be parents. But I wish you the utmost grace and peace if you have found my videos and you are in this valley. I'm here. I'd love to talk to you. Feel free to send me a comment. You are not alone, and I feel motivated to share my story and help people in this space. And maybe there's a purpose in this from God. Maybe He has a reason for putting me in this valley. And if anything, I have learned several things. I have learned how to have empathy for others going through this that I never would have even been able to have before. I have learned to live in the sorrows over the past few weeks that, yeah, maybe my life is not what I want it to be right now, but I'm not going to give up. I've learned that you can't give up. You have to fight for what you want. And I'm not going to give up trying to be a mom, because I'll never get there if I don't keep trying. And it's hard to have faith. It's hard to have bravery. And I'm nowhere near ready to talk about trying again at all. Like, at all. The thought of that really, really freaks me out. But I know in my heart and soul that the right thing for me to do is to keep trying with some medical assistance and not give up, because I'll never get the dream of being a mom if I don't keep trying. And there's a lot of growth that comes from that. And so I believe that this is going to make me a better person, a stronger person, and hopefully a person that can help others better. So pray for God to give you hope and help you to see the light and connect you to the right resources. Thank you for watching this video on my channel, and I hope you have a blessed day.